Welcome back, explorers of the cosmos, to Beyond the Stars, your sanctuary for interstellar journeys, cosmic romance, and adventures beyond imagination. Tonight, prepare your hearts and minds as we journey to Tharaxis, a forgotten desert moon where promises made beneath the stars shape destinies. When a young boy crashes onto this harsh alien world, his act of bravery sparks a love story that will bridge two civilizations and change them forever. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our stories so you never miss your chance to explore the universe with us. So sit back, relax, and gaze upwards, because tonight we travel once more. Beyond the Stars, Chapter 1, Crash into Dust. The desert moon of Tharaxis was not listed on any travel brochure. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't kind. It was a wasteland of burning winds, bone-dry storms, and sand that swallowed metal and memory alike. But it would be the place where destiny began, for a boy who fell from the stars. The escape pod screamed as it tore through the thin atmosphere, trailing fire across the red-orange sky. Inside, 13-year-old Miles Cavanagh clung to the crash restraints, teeth clenched, sweat pouring from his brow. The pod's systems flickered violently, throwing alerts in a dozen languages he barely understood. "Impact in 10 seconds, the AI stuttered in a glitchy tone. "Brace, brace." The world went sideways. With a deafening crunch, the pod slammed into the sand, bounced once, then skidded across the dunes like a skipping stone before finally lodging itself in a sloped ridge of jagged rock. Silence. Then, fire. Systems sparked and hissed. Smoke filled the interior. Miles kicked open the hatch, coughing as he stumbled into the unrelenting heat. The air hit him like a furnace, dry, searing, heavy with dust and something metallic. He staggered, half-blinded, away from the wreckage, one hand shielding his eyes. He had no idea where he was. His shuttle had been en route to the Freya Research Academy, a place for gifted kids with deep space aptitude. But pirates had ambushed the convoy. In the chaos, his pod had been ejected on an automated trajectory, aimed at the closest moon with breathable air. Barely breathable. Tharaxis. He walked for what felt like hours, the sunless sky a gray sheet of heat haze. His water pack was damaged, dripping uselessly. The terrain shifted constantly beneath his feet. No rhythm, no direction. He was alone, dizzy, dying. Then he heard it. Voices. Rough, guttural, not in any language he recognized. He dropped to his belly, crawling toward the sound. Beyond the next dune, a scene unfolded that burned itself into his memory. 3 humanoid figures, massive, armored and armed, surrounded a girl. No, not a girl. A being. She was glowing. Her skin was bronze gold, glowing faintly like the embers of a dying fire. Lines of bioluminescence shimmered across her arms and neck. Her silver hair whipped in the hot wind as she faced them, unflinching despite being outnumbered. One of the attackers grabbed her by the arm, snarling. She hissed something back, defiant. Miles's instincts screamed at him to stay hidden. He didn't. Gripping a smooth rock, he stood, aimed, and hurled it with all his might. "Hey!" His voice cracked from the dryness. "Get away from her!" The rock struck the leader squarely in the back of the helmet. It didn't hurt him, but it startled them. In that moment, the glowing girl moved. She ducked, spun, and drove her fist into one attacker's gut, releasing a pulse of light. He flew backward, unconscious before he hit the ground. Another swung at her, but she ducked again and drove her elbow into his throat. The third lunged at Miles, snarling. He froze. But instinct kicked in. He dropped and rolled as the assailant reached him. The girl sprinted forward and leapt, her foot slamming into the man's chest. He collapsed in a heap. Silence fell. Miles panted, heart hammering, still crouched in the sand. The girl approached slowly, her glowing skin dimming to a warm gold. Now up close, he saw the markings across her body, patterns like constellations, pulsing gently. Her eyes were dark with glowing irises, ancient and curious. "You are foolish," she said in accented standard, "but brave." He blinked. I just, you were, they." She tilted her head, then knelt beside him. Her hand hovered over a wound on his arm, something he hadn't noticed. The sandworm venom must have gotten in. "You are poisoned," she said quietly. She leaned closer, lips brushing against the cut. He flinched, but didn't pull away. A faint warmth spread through his blowstream, tingling, hot, strangely comforting. What was that? I gave you a breath of the desert, she said. A part of my essence. It will cleanse you. You will carry it until the time is right. He stared, still dazed. Why help me? Her gaze softened. Then she leaned in, whispering close to his ear, her breath like dry wind in something ancient. Return when you are a warrior. Then the pact will be fulfilled. And just like that, she stood, turned, and disappeared into the dunes, leaving only a shimmer of light where her footsteps had been. Miles sat there alone, heartbeat slowing. He didn't know who she was or what she had done to him, but he knew one thing for certain. He would return. Chapter 2, Scars and Starlight. 15 years later, the stars looked colder. Not because they were. Miles Cavanagh had simply seen too much since the last time he fell through one. The scar on his forearm, the faint crescent-shaped mark where Kaelri had pressed her glowing lips, had never faded. No medical scan could explain it. No dermal region could erase it. It pulsed faintly when he was near heat, like it remembered the desert better than he did. And now he was returning. The freighter, Hawthorne Drift, creaked as it dropped out of warp above Tharaxis, orbiting the cracked moon with caution. The bridge reeked of coolant and recycled air, and Miles stood alone near the viewport, arms folded tight across his chest. Are you sure about this? The pilot, a cyborg named Grell, asked over comms. This place is not on any chart worth trusting. I'm not trusting charts, Miles said quietly. Just a promise. Grell muttered something about suicidal romantics and tapped the controls. We'll drop you near the coordinates you gave me. I'm staying in orbit. You don't radio back in 48 hours. I'll assume you found your desert goddess and turned to dust. Miles offered a half smile. Fair. He took the drop shuttle down alone. The descent was rougher than expected. The sandstorms were more aggressive now, wilder, like the planet didn't recognize him anymore. Or maybe it did, and this was a warning. When he stepped onto the surface again, something in his chest tightened. Not quite dread, not excitement either. A strange gravity, like the moon itself, remembered what happened here. He wasn't the same boy who had stumbled into Kaelri's life. He'd fought in the border fires, the Silicate Rebellion, in the Ghost Front near Turno 6. He'd lost people, friends, himself. He'd spent years drifting from contract to contract, as if trying to outrun something invisible. But that whisper, the one from a glowing girl in the sand, had never left him. He hiked across the dunes for hours with only the sunless sky and the dry hiss of the wind for company. Eventually, he found something strange. A structure, half buried, rising from the sands like bone. It pulsed faintly, made not of stone or metal, but something alive. A living shell etched with glowing symbols that shifted when he blinked. He reached out. The door opened before he touched it. Immediately they emerged. Figures in flowing robes of burnished cloth, skin golden with thin threads of bioluminescence that pulsed in color and rhythm. Their eyes, large, black-rimmed, full of suspicion, narrowed at him. He raised his hands. I'm not here to fight. They didn't speak, not with words, but suddenly the air changed. Scent. It wasn't strong, not offensive, but something slipped into his Thraz senses, like burned spice, chameau, and wet stone. Emotions flooded him, curiosity, wariness, beneath it something older, recognition. One of the figures stepped closer, a warrior judging by the armor beneath her robe. She approached, nose twitching slightly, eyes flicking to the scar on his arm. She inhaled sharply. A moment passed, then she knelt. The others followed, heads bowed. What? Miles started, stunned. The warrior raised her eyes to him. Her voice, when it came, was clear and melodic. You carry the mark of breath. The pact lives in you. Kaelri, he said. Is she here? Another wave of scent hit the air, stronger this time. Bitter citrus, sharp mineral, and something like sorrow. She has ascended, the warrior said. Miles's heart sank. You mean she is alive, the woman corrected, tilting her head. But not the girl you knew. She is Kaelri no longer. She is Kaelri Inahara, keeper of wind, seeker for the deep sand. She has become the pillar of our kin. Miles was speechless. She hadn't just survived, she'd risen. "I need to see her," he said. The warrior nodded. "Then you must be judged. The pact must be tested. Come." She turned and gestured, and the others parted. Miles followed her through a tunnel of living stone. The walls shimmered like amber caught in sunlight, even though no sun shone on this moon. The deeper they went, the cooler the air became. The scent changed too. Now it was earthy, old, and heavy with something that felt like memory. They emerged into a vast underground hall, a domed chamber, pulsing with the heartbeat of the moon itself. In its center stood a dais, surrounded by spiraling tendrils of sand suspended in the air, as if caught mid-dance. And there she stood, Kaelri, taller now, regal, dressed in fabric woven from dustlight and mineral silk. Her hair was longer, braided with glowing stones. Her body pulsed with calm power, markings elegant and complex. Her eyes met his, and in that moment, all sound, all scent, all breath left his body. She stepped down the dais. "You returned," she said softly, "and not as a child." "No," he replied, voice hoarse. "Not anymore." She circled him once, eyes lingering on his face, his shoulders, his scar. Her scent touched the air, heat and dusk and something like longing. "You come not for conquest nor claim. But still the pact demands proof." Miles nodded. "Then test me." Kaelri's voice dropped to a near whisper, thick with memory. "Then you shall face the three." Chapter 3, The Flame Beneath the Sand. The chamber fell silent after Kaelri's words. Only the faint hum of the living stone walls remained, like the moon was holding its breath. Miles stared at her. The girl he remembered, blazing and beautiful, was still there, but refined, sharpened into something fierce and quiet. Her eyes no longer shimmered with wonder. They glowed with purpose. "You shall face the first trial," she said, her voice like dry wind over ancient dunes. "The trial of flame. Not of fire, but of pressure, heat, isolation, instinct." He raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like therapy in hell." A few of the nearby Sandari guards exchanged puzzled glances. Kaelri didn't smile. She turned and motioned for him to follow. They moved through winding tunnels that sloped downward, deeper beneath the sands. The air changed as they descended, denser, warmer, tinged with mineral tang and a metallic scent that tickled Miles's throat. "This place, it's alive, isn't it?" he asked. Kaelri nodded without turning. "We do not build, we coax. We grow with the desert. It responds to intent, emotion, sometimes hunger." "Hunger?" She stopped before an archway etched with spiral carvings that shimmered faintly. "The Mavethka," she said, "the living maze. It listens, and it tests. No Sandari becomes an adult without passing through it. You will enter alone, no weapon, no armor, no guide." Miles glanced at the arch, then back at her. "Any advice?" Kaelri stepped close, closer than she had been since their reunion. Her scent reached him, cool dust, sun-warmed stone, and something like regret. "Do not fight the sand," she said quietly. "Feel it, flow with it. It knows the difference between a trespasser and a brother." Before he could respond, she turned sharply and disappeared into the shadows, her robe whispering against the stone. Two silent Sandari motioned him forward. He stripped down to a simple tunic and loose pants, Sandari fabric, lightweight and responsive to heat. At the threshold, he paused. The moment he stepped through the arch, everything changed. The air shimmered. The sand beneath his feet turned from firm packed to shifting, unstable. The corridor twisted behind him, disappearing. No ceiling, no wall, only red-gold dunes stretching in every direction. The temperature spiked. Miles inhaled sharply. The air was breathable, barely, but dry enough to sting his throat and nose. Heat rose from the ground in visible waves. He took a step. The sand beneath him shifted, almost intentionally, trying to unbalance him. He adjusted. Then again, and again. It was like walking across a sea made of memory foam and malice. Hours passed, or minutes. Time was strange here. The sunless sky above offered no compass, no stars. Just a dull, oppressive orange that never changed. Sweat soaked his back. His tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. Then he heard it. Whispers. Not voices. Not words, sense. The air shifted and a cloud of aroma hit him. Smoked leather, blood, and fire. Suddenly, he was back on Ternos 6. Blaster fire lit the jungle. His squad, Fisher, Dale, and Briv screaming. Plasma eating through metal and flesh. The stench of burning bone. Miles stumbled forward. No, this isn't real. This isn't. The sand beneath him opened like a mouth. He dropped, fell, and landed hard in a cavern filled with mirrored walls. His reflection appeared everywhere, but in each one he was different. Younger, older, armed, bleeding, laughing, screaming, dying. Each version stared back at him with unspoken accusation. Then they spoke, not aloud but through scent, bitterness, smoke, ash, regret. He covered his nose instinctively. No, I've made peace with this. The scent didn't fade. He remembered Kaelri's words. Feel it. Don't fight it. He dropped to one knee and opened his senses. Let the sense fill him. Let the heat burn. He breathed in every regret, every failure. Every time he turned his back or raised his weapon or wished for silence when someone begged for help. And then he exhaled. The mirrors cracked. A tunnel opened. Beyond it, cool air. He walked forward. He emerged, hours or days later. He couldn't tell. Back into the dome where Kaelri waited. His tunic was soaked, ragged. His face was burned at the edges, but he stood tall, eyes sharp. She stepped forward, her expression unreadable. She reached out and touched the mark on his arm. It flared, glowing gold. The scent in the chamber shifted instantly. Earth after rain, sun-warmed metal, and the sharp bite of spice. Approval. You passed, she said. Did I? He asked. Kaelri studied him. The sand didn't kill you. That is not the same as passing. But it accepted you. Miles looked down at his hands. The faintest shimmer ran across his skin, like fine particles of gold dust embedded in his pores. He looked up, and she nodded. You're beginning to change. He didn't ask what that meant. She stepped back and gestured toward a high arch of blue-hued crystal. Rest, the second trial begins at moonrise, and it will not test your body. Miles didn't move. Kaelri, he said. She paused, turning halfway. That day, he said, when you kissed the cut, did you know what that would do to me? A long silence, then, yes. And she walked away, her glowing footsteps fading into the air, like a memory that refused to vanish. Chapter 4. The fragrance of truth. The chamber was quiet, too quiet. Miles stood alone beneath an arched dome made of translucent crystal, its surface humming with soft bioluminescent pulses. It felt like a heartbeat, but not his own. This place was alive. He could feel it. The trial of flame had tested his body. This, he sensed, would test something else entirely. Kaelri had said only 3 words before leaving him here. Their scent is memory. A low vibration rippled through the floor as the walls sealed behind him. The light dimmed to a twilight hue. From hidden vents, a faint mist began to drift into the room. Clear at first, then shimmering with soft colors. The air thickened, heavy with something ancient. Then came the scents. Not all at once, but like waves, each one unlocking something within him. The first was warm, sweet, innocent. Vanilla and oil smoke. His childhood. Miles saw himself as a boy again, no more than 7, curled up beside his father beneath a maintenance deck on Ganymede Station, listening to old music on a static-filled speaker. His father's voice rough, his hands calloused. Laughing, teaching him how to read schematics with a flashlight between their teeth. One day you'll fly as something better than these junkers. Miles reached toward the memory, but it flickered and vanished. Another wave. Gunmetal. Blood. Burnt plastic. The war. Turn 06, he saw Fisher screaming, half his face gone. Dalen dragging a wounded soldier out of the fire, only to get caught by sniper fire. Miles holding the comlink, begging for evac that never came. The scent tightened his throat. He stumbled forward. No, he whispered. That's not who I am anymore. But the chamber didn't stop. It pushed deeper, spice and salt, perfume and regret. Her, not Kaelri, someone else. A woman from a lonely outpost. A night they shared, a promise they both broke, a child that never came to be. Miles dropped to one knee, breath shuddering. I get it, he growled. You want me to remember everything I tried to forget. The air shimmered with something sharper now, metal and sand and burning wind. Kaelri, not in the room but in his mind. He saw her standing on the dune 15 years ago, backlit by swirling dust. Young, radiant, her silver hair tangled with wind, the moment she leaned in and whispered that impossible promise. Return when you are a warrior. He wanted to believe he had returned for her, but the truth was harsher. He had returned for himself. To understand why that moment had never let him go. Why her whisper had echoed longer than all the screams of war. Why her scent still lingered at the edge of his memory, like a song he couldn't stop humming. I don't know what I'm doing here, he admitted aloud, voice cracking. I don't know if I came back for love, for redemption, or because I'm just tired of running. The scent in the air shifted again. Warm stone, rain on hot earth, a mother's heartbeat. Peace, it didn't demand anything from him, it simply was. The mist began to clear. A final vision formed. Kaelri, standing at the threshold of this very chamber. She looked older, tired, as if she too had been through trials of her own. She watched him with quiet intensity. It is not your pain I need to see, she said. It is your willingness to carry it without turning away. He met her gaze, and this time he didn't flinch. I see you, Bob, he said. The vision faded. Light returned. The scent in the air was golden, impossible to describe. A blend of all the others woven into something new. His. A low chime echoed through the chamber. The wall before him opened. Kaelri stood on the other side, hopes trailing behind her like desert clouds. Her expression was unreadable. He stepped out, blinking under the soft lights of the inner sanctum. You endured, she said simply. Miles exhaled. I remembered. That is the price of growing. He looked at her closely. Have you done it too, the trial? She hesitated, then nodded. Every Sandari must. My own trial was the day after I was chosen to become the voice of the deep sand. I spent 3 days lost in my own scent. I emerged a different person. And what did you remember? Kaelri's eyes searched his for a long moment. Then she said so quietly he almost missed it. You. That one word sent a shiver down his spine, but before he could answer, a low tremor rippled through the floor. The lights flickered. Distant voices shouted in a language he didn't understand, but the tone was unmistakable. Urgency. Kaelri turned sharply. The third trial begins now, she said, and not in ceremony. Miles tensed. What's happening? She didn't answer, just grabbed his arm and pulled him into motion. Down another corridor, faster this time. The scent of fear thick in the air now, smoke, acid, static electricity, and beneath it, something worse. Betrayal. Chapter 5. Offering the core alarms didn't exist in the Sandari world, not in the human sense. Instead, the walls pulsed red, not lights, veins. The very structure of the city had changed. The floor beneath Miles's feet hummed with vibration, and the air thickened with an acrid tang, sulfur, static, and something older. Something that bled. Kaelri pulled him through the narrow corridor at a pace just shy of a sprint, her robe trailing like a second shadow. The core is under attack, she said breathlessly. Miles kept pace beside her, adrenaline overriding exhaustion. What core? She didn't answer. They descended into the deepest layer of the Sandari city, through a tunnel that breathed with every step, its walls contracting and releasing like a living lung. At last, they entered a chamber unlike anything Miles had seen. It was vast, the ceiling lost in a haze of luminescent mist. In the center stood a massive crystalline structure, suspended by tendrils of glowing mineral veins and sand coils that twisted around it like roots. It pulsed slowly like a slumbering heart, but the pulse was flickering. It was dying. Kaelri's face was tight with pain. This is the heart of Tharaxis, the core that binds the sand, the breath, the memory. Without it, our world fractures, physically and spiritually. Miles turned slowly, taking it in. The energy in the room was unlike anything he had ever felt. It wasn't technological, not biological in the way humans understood. It was spiritual and systemic, and it was unraveling. What happened? He asked. Someone planted a dissonance seed, she replied bitterly, a frequency pulse. designed to disrupt the core's resonance. We believe it came from the surface, perhaps human tech, smuggled and triggered by one of ours. Miles felt his chest tighten. Sabotage? Kaelri nodded. The core is in collapse. If it fails, the entire biome turns hostile. The sand will no longer recognize us. Or you. And how do you stop it? She turned to face him. We don't. A pause. You will. He blinked. Come again? Kaelri stepped close, her gaze boring into his. The pact doesn't end with trials. It ends with choice. The core can be stabilized by a resonance offering, a soul graft, someone who has passed the maze, endured the fragrance, and carries the breath of the desert within. She placed a hand on his chest. The core needs a living bond, a conduit, one not born Sandari, but made part of us by sacrifice. Miles stared at her. You want me to connect to that? He pointed at the massive structure. I'm not even sure I fully understand what that is. You don't have to, Kaelri whispered. The desert does. It remembers you. His heart thudded. You said this was a trial, but this is suicide. No, she said. It's transformation. He laughed, a dry, ragged sound. You could have warned me when I got here. I didn't know it would come to this. She stepped even closer, lowering her voice. But I knew you would choose it, because that's who you've always been. He looked away. The scared kid who threw a rock? The warrior who returned, she said, gently lifting his chin. And the man who still carries kindness, like a blade. Miles looked at the core again. The flickering light, the unstable pulse. He could feel it calling now. Not with words, not even with scent, but with instinct. Like it recognized something inside him, and it was waiting. He stepped forward. What do I have to do? Kaelri walked with him to the edge of the platform. You'll step into the offering ring. Let the sand touch your skin. It will draw your essence out. Not to kill, but to graft. It will hurt. You may lose pieces of memory, pieces of self. But if you endure, the core will stabilize. She paused. You may never be fully human again. He turned to her. I haven't been fully human for years. Kaelri's expression cracked. For the first time since his return, he saw something in her shift. Fear, love, hope. Come back, she whispered. Only if you wait, he whispered back. He stepped into the ring. At first, nothing happened. Then the sand stirred. It slithered up his legs, warm, coiling like liquid silk. Not aggressive, not violent, just searching. Then the pain came. White hot, not on his skin, but beneath it, like fire blooming in his marrow. He screamed once and bit down hard enough to taste blood. The sand pressed against the mark on his arm. It glowed, brilliant gold, pulsing like a beacon. The core responded instantly. Its flickering stabilized. The pulses slowed, then grew stronger, brighter, harmonized. Miles dropped to his knees, eyes rolled back, sweat pouring down his face. The sand lifted him gently, floating his body midair. Kaelri watched in silence, lips trembling. Then, silence. The sand released him. Miles collapsed, unconscious. He awoke to warmth, steady breath, the sound of her voice. You did it, Kaelri whispered. He blinked. His skin glowed faintly, his veins traced with golden lines like the sand had etched itself into him. Kaelri touched his chest. You are Sandari now. He exhaled. Do I get a badge? She smiled, and for the first time since their reunion, laughed and kissed him. Not as a reward, but as a recognition of a promise kept and a bond reforged. Chapter 6, The Soul Binding. The Chamber of Union lay beneath the deepest strata of Tharaxis, below sand, rootstone, and even memory. Miles stood at its threshold, still weak, his skin still glowing faintly with golden filaments pulsing beneath the surface. His heartbeat felt slower now, steadier, yet deeper, as if it no longer belonged to just him. Kaelri stood opposite of him, clad in ceremonial robes woven from wind silk and crystallized dust. Her markings shimmered in harmony with his, patterns shifting across her skin in spirals and pulses that moved in time with his breath. The room around them, round, open, alive, was formed entirely from naturally grown mineral glass. High above, translucent stalks filtered moonlight through the ceiling like strands of silver rain. In the center was a low pool, its surface still, reflecting not just their bodies, but fragments of their past. Their first meeting, her whisper, the blood mark, his return, the pain, the core. The pool remembered. Kaelri stepped forward, her voice low but resonant. By the breath of the desert and the memory of the sand, we come now to the final rite. Miles swallowed. This is it? She nodded once. The soul binding. Among our kind, it is not just a ritual of love. It is a merging of essence, body, mind, memory. If we are not in harmony, the union fails, sometimes violently. His brow rose. You didn't mention the violently part before. I didn't want you nervous, she said dryly. He smirked, despite the gravity of it all. Kaelri stepped into the pool first. The liquid was not water. It felt like slow-moving air that tingled with unseen currents. When she looked back at him, her eyes were ringed with luminous white. She held out a hand. Miles stepped in after her. The moment he touched the liquid, it responded, glowing brighter where it met his skin. His markings flared in return. The resonance between them began, soft at first, like a low hum in his bones. He felt her breath before she drew it, felt her heartbeat echoing through his own. She raised her palm and pressed it against his chest. He mirrored her, and then the desert opened. Not literally, but within them. A vision surged between them, vivid, shared, involuntary. They stood atop a cliff overlooking Tharaxis, its dunes rolling endlessly under 3 moons. Around them, time bent. Fragments of memories swirled through the air. Miles as a boy, throwing rocks at mercenaries. Kaelri bleeding during her warrior trial. Miles cradling a dying comrade on Turno 6. Kaelri walking alone after ascending to leadership. Their pain, their solitude, their hidden longing, but also their courage, their stubbornness, their laughter, their bond. You never stop carrying that moment, Kaelri whispered, her voice echoing across the shared dream space. You left a mark, Miles said, on my skin, on my thoughts. You haunted every star I passed. They reached out and touched each other's temples. The vision shifted. Now they stood in the future, their possible future. A home carved into the rock near the core, where human and Sandari children played in the sands. Kaelri teaching desert breath to off-worlders. Miles mediating peace talks between factions. The wind no longer howling, but singing. Then chaos, a flash of war. Outsiders trying to claim Tharaxis. Miles bleeding again. Kaelri fighting beside him. The core trembling. Then light, hope, unity, the desert accepting them both. Their vision faded. Back in the ritual chamber, the pool now glowed with molten gold. Their bodies floated inches off the surface, held in suspension. Their foreheads touched. Then, connection. Not metaphorical, literal. A pulse surged through them. A light leapt from Kaelri's heart to his, and back again, forming a visible strand of energy. His body spasmed once, but then relaxed. Her eyes fluttered closed. Her markings pulsed in perfect sync with his. They descended slowly back into the pool. The glow dimmed, settled, then sank into silence. They stood there, chest to chest, hands still joined, breathing as one. Kaelri opened her eyes. I felt your grief, she said softly. I felt your loneliness, Ronald, he answered. And I no longer feel either, she finished. Miles smiled. Then I guess it worked. It more than worked, said a voice behind them. The elder, tall, draped in robes of ash and light, stood at the entrance. Her eyes glowed with ancient recognition. Never in recorded breath has a human completed the 3 trials. Never has one balanced the core. And never has a soul-binding crossed species and survived. She approached them slowly, her scent radiating reverence and awe. You are now one in spirit, in memory, in breath. What you do with that unity will change more than this world. Kaelri turned to Miles. She's right. He raised an eyebrow. That's a lot of pressure for someone who used to fix junk freighters and punch people for a living. Kaelri smiled and slipped her fingers between his. Then we'll handle it together. The elder nodded and stepped aside. The moon remembers its own. They step from the pool. Together, Chapter 7, when Sikwanin remembers, the wind howled above Tharaxis again. But this time it wasn't natural. Miles and Kaelri emerged from the soul-binding chamber to find the desert city in unrest. The soft bioluminescent glow that once lined the corridors now flickered erratically, like a living organism experiencing pain. Scent trails in the air spoke of alarm, confusion, and something darker. Betrayal. The elders were waiting. "We've lost contact with the surface perimeter," one of them said, her voice clipped and low. "Sensors suggest a breach through the outer dune spine. Human tech. Military pattern." Miles stiffened. That can't be coincidence. Kaelri's jaw tightened. "No, it's deliberate. The saboteur who planted the dissonance pulse was only the beginning." Another elder stepped forward. "We believe he has resurfaced, one of our own. A Sandari who rejected the binding traditions, who sees unity with off-worlders as a corruption." Miles's throat went dry. "Where is he now?" "Heading for the car," Kaelri said without hesitation. "He knows Miles is now connected. He'll want to sever that bond by killing him." Miles's fingers curled into fists. "Let him try." The chase through the lower tunnels was a blur. Kaelri led the way barefoot, moving with lethal grace. Her robes whipped behind her like smoke, her eyes scanning every shifting surface, every scent on the air. Miles followed, not with her finesse, but with purpose. The core chamber pulsed ahead, alive, vulnerable. Then, a flash of movement. A Sandari warrior stepped from the shadows, clad in desert black armor veined with copper. His markings were dull, corrupted, unbalanced. He raised a plasma blade. Kaelri moved first. She launched into a fluid arc, her foot catching the enemy's wrist, sending the blade spinning. Miles surged forward, tackling the traitor into the sand. They wrestled, fists flying, but Miles had the strength and the fury. The warrior snarled, "You are not of us, off-worlder. You do not belong in the breath of Tharaxis." "I bled for your core," Miles growled, pinning the man's arm. "I nearly burned for your dessert. You pollute it." The traitor spat. "You and that soul-sick witch who bound herself to a foreign heart." Kaelri stepped beside them, calm but deadly. Her hand glowed with concentrated heat. "I should end you," she whispered. But Miles shook his head. "No." He turned to the gathered elders who had followed. "Don't kill him." The elders exchanged surprised glances. "Why not?" "Because his hate is visible," Miles said. "His actions can be judged, punished. But if you silence him now, he becomes a martyr to others who think like him. We need transparency. We need truth." Kaelri studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. The elders bowed in agreement. The traitor was taken away, bound in chains of wind metal and bioluminescent seal threads. Kaelri turned to Miles, and for the first time since their union, she allowed herself to lean against him. "You speak like someone born here," she said. He smirked. "You're rubbing off on me." But her eyes were serious. "You've done more than complete the trials, more than bind your soul to mine. You've given Tharaxis something it's never had." Miles raised an eyebrow. "What?" She smiled faintly. "A future." 2 days later, the Sandari city opened its gates. For the first time in recorded breath, human envoys stepped onto sacred sands under truce banners. Their boots were removed, their weapons deactivated, and at the center of the receiving line stood Miles and Kaelri side by side. Kaelri wore the crown of dunes, signifying her position not just as leader, but guide of integration. Miles wore no crown, just his scars, his mark, and his open hands. They spoke not in standard nor in scent, but in gesture. One open palm pressed to the chest, one to the sky, then together, a sign of offering, of breath shared. The Sandari murmured in scent, acceptance, curiosity, and cautious hope. Miles whispered to Kaelri as they watched the ceremony unfold, "You think this will hold?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "The sand remembers everything, the pain, the betrayals, the love. But when new footsteps walk its surface, together, it learns to forgive." He looked up at the sky above them, 3 moons now in perfect alignment. And for the first time since he was a boy, Miles Cavanagh didn't feel lost. He felt home. Chapter 8, The The pact fulfilled, the wind across the dunes was soft now, no longer howling, no longer filled with heat or warning, but warm, like a sigh from the planet itself. Tharaxis, the desert moon, had shifted, not in geography, but in something deeper, in memory, in spirit. And in the quiet hours before dawn, beneath a sky stitched with stars, Miles Cavanagh sat beside Kaelri at the edge of a high cliff overlooking the vast sea of sand. They were alone, no guards, no elders, no duty, just two souls who had once collided in violence and promise, and now rested in something more powerful than either of them had expected. "I didn't think I'd survive the binding," Miles murmured, breaking the silence. Kaelri tilted her head, eyes reflecting starlight. "You didn't." He looked at her, puzzled. She smiled softly. "The boy who crashed here 15 years ago didn't survive, nor the soldier who returned." She placed her hand over his heart, where golden lines still pulsed beneath his skin. "This is someone new." Miles chuckled, leaning into her touch. "So what do we call him?" Kaelri considered. "Mine." He turned to her fully now, taking in every detail of her braided silver hair, her glowing tattoos, the stillness in her arms that had once intimidated him and now felt like home. "Will you ever get tired of me?" Bai asked. "I waited a decade for you," she said. "I think I'm in it for the long journey." They sat in silence again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of all the things that didn't need saying anymore. Miles watched the sands shift below, the city slowly awakening beneath the dunes, its glow spreading like golden roots. Somewhere out there, humans in Sandari were speaking, learning, sharing breath and food, and maybe even dreams. A future was being written, not by kings or generals, but by whispers and gestures, by two people who had decided not to give up on a promise made in blood and heat. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Marking me, I mean." Kaelri didn't hesitate. "Never. You didn't know me." "I knew enough," she said. "I knew you were foolish, brave, selfless. I knew you wouldn't forget, and you didn't." She turned to face him more directly, the desert wind lifting strands of her hair. "You became exactly the man I hoped you would, and something more." Miles's throat tightened. He hadn't expected her words to strike so deep. He reached into his jacket and pulled something from the inner pocket, a small object wrapped in star-lace cloth. He handed it to her. She opened it slowly. Inside was a pendant, crafted from Tharaxis glass and Terran alloy, fused into a swirling symbol of unity, a spiral of sand looping into a star. "For you," he said quietly, "for the day we made something new." Kaelri's fingers trembled slightly as she held it to her chest. "You're getting better at gifts." "Don't get used to it," he said with a crooked grin. "I already have," she whispered. She leaned forward, and when their lips met, it was not a kiss of fire or urgency, but of completion. A kiss that said, "We've come far enough to stop running." When they parted, Miles drew her into his arms, holding her close as the horizon brightened faintly with the first breath of dawn. "What happens now?" he asked. Kaelri rested her head against his shoulder. "We build, slowly, carefully. We teach. We make mistakes. We learn." "We?" "Yes," she said. "Because you're not leaving, Miles Cavanagh. Not unless I go with you." He exhaled, and for the first time in his life, he didn't feel pulled in two directions. He didn't feel like a man torn between war and peace, between stars and silence. He simply felt anchored, and loved, and whole. Kaelri laced her fingers with his and whispered, "The pact is fulfilled, but the journey has just begun." And as the first rays of starlight kissed the sands below, the desert remembered them, not just as warriors, or saviors, or symbols, but as one. Epilogue. 5 years of breath, the sands of Tharaxis no longer howled with hunger. They hummed, low and steady, like a great beast finally at peace curled beneath its own sky. From atop a sun-kissed terrace carved into the side of a canyon cliff, Miles Cavanagh watched the dunes ripple in waves of golden light. Below, the city shimmered, no longer hidden, no longer afraid. Towers of mineral glass spiraled upward beside domes grown from windstone, their shapes organic, alive. Human and Sandari children chased scent drones through the plaza, laughing in both voice and fragrance. Peace had roots now. It had texture, color, and sound. Behind him, footsteps approached, light, rhythmic, unmistakable. "You're up early again," said Kaelri, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. He leaned back into her warmth, smiling. "Just wanted to see the dunes breathe. They've been doing that for centuries." "Not like this." Kaelri rested her chin on his shoulder. "No, not like this." They stood there in silence, watching the wind play with the sand like a painter brushing soft strokes across canvas. Inside the home carved into the rock, their home, lights flickered to life in gentle pulses. A Sandari Terran fusion of technology, the dwelling responded not just to motion, but to emotions. The bond between them, sealed years ago, was embedded in its walls. Kaelri turned and walked to the edge of the terrace, her robe trailing behind her. She reached into the folds and drew out a small crystal communicator. "They have confirmed the delegation," she said, "from Earth and all 3 moons of Kendar Prime. They're calling this the first Unified Breath Summit." Miles whistled. "Catchy name. Better than the one I came up with." Kaelri raised an eyebrow. "You mean the big space meeting?" He shrugged. "I thought it had charm." She shook her head, laughing softly. Her markings pulsed with warm amusement. Miles stepped beside her and asked quietly, "Do you ever miss it?" "Earth?" He nodded. She thought for a moment, then said, "No, because what I loved there found me here." She turned toward him fully, her fingers tracing the pattern across his chest. His markings, once faint, had grown deeper, richer. They shimmered now with a pattern that was uniquely his. Not Sandari, not Terran, something in between, a symbol of what they'd built. A life neither could have imagined, forged not in comfort, but in fire, scent, and trust. A small voice interrupted them. "Mom, Dad?" They turned. A child stood in the doorway, golden skin kissed with starlight, eyes ringed with a color not seen in either species, midnight blue threaded with ember gold. A hybrid soul, the child of Pact and promise. Kaelri bent down. "You're awake, my spark." The child nodded. "I had a dream, about wind and light, about a time when the sand was angry." Miles crouched beside them. "That was before you were born, before the breath of Tharaxis knew peace." The child tilted their head. "Why was it angry?" Kaelri smiled gently. "Because it was waiting." "For what?" Miles looked into the child's eyes and answered, "For someone to keep a promise." And as the first winds of morning danced through the canyon, carrying the faint scent of desert lilies and distant rain, the family stood together. A warrior, a builder, a bridge between worlds, and a child of both. The pact lived on, not just in stories or symbols, but in every breath. The true end. And so our journey tonight comes to an end. But remember, the universe holds countless stories, each waiting to find its way into our hearts. If you enjoyed this cosmic romance, please hit the like button, share this story with your friends, and make sure to subscribe for more adventures from across the stars. Thank you for being part of our community here on Beyond the Stars. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep exploring, and keep your eyes on the horizon because the greatest stories are always waiting beyond the stars. Good night.